Definitely C. Internet, welcome to Food Theory, the show that's here to fill your brain with the most stuff. People often ask me, Pat, why do you want to ruin my childhood? Year after year, channel after channel, episode after episode, you go out of your way to undermine everything I love about Disney and Nintendo and now even Kool-Aid. Why? Well, here's the truth, friends. Come closer and I'll tell you. Closer, closer. I'm not trying. Theorists, I'm just a simple YouTuber who happens to follow the facts wherever they lead. Take today's episode as an example. I set out to make a pleasant little video about Oreo cookies. I really did. I stumbled across a fun fact about how Oreo spent a lot of money to make their cookies kosher back in the 90s. Harmless, right? I love Oreos. I love our food channel. I love the fact that our food channel allows me to buy things like Oreos that I can write off on my taxes. And heck, it sounded like an interesting topic, so naturally I looked into why Oreo would spend tens of millions of dollars on a recipe tweak when they were already the best-selling cookie in the world. And what I found is that it wasn't just a business decision about dollars and cents, it was a personal vendetta. And from there I just descended down into grocery store conspiracies and Big Cookie trying to smash Little Cookie into crumbles and a cover-up that's been decades in the making. Theorists, it turns out going kosher was Oreo's masterstroke in a century-old sandwich cookie feud. That's right, I said sandwich cookie feud. And I'm not so sure that Oreo's on the right side of this one either, because that sweet little fun fact about Oreos being kosher is, in fact, sandwiched between two dark, sinister secrets. So settle in, theorists, because while Oreo's cookies may be kosher, their alleged business practices haven't always been. It's time for Oreos to get dunked on. Dunked on, as in dunked in the milk, but also dunked on in the Anyway, it all begins a long time ago. So here's how this whole cookie feud began. Back in the 1890s, brothers Jacob and Joseph Luce started a bakery together in Kansas City, Missouri. Jacob fell ill and went to Europe to recover. While he was away, Joseph used his seat on the company's board to take the company in a new direction and form the National Biscuit Company, today known as Nabisco. Jacob, the sick brother, was not happy about this decision, eventually recovered from his illness and returned to the States. He decided to get back into the cookie game, but not with Nabisco. Instead, Jacob started the Loose Wiles Biscuit Company with a new business partner, quickly building it up to be the second largest bakery in the US, behind, you guessed it, Nabisco. A large part of that success came in 1908 when the Loose Wiles Biscuit Company released the Hydrox Sandwich Cookie, a revolutionary dessert with 2 chocolate cookies and a cream filling. 4 years later, Nabisco would release the Oreo, and well, it was a ripoff of the Hydrox, and a shameless one at that. Like, there is no beating around the bush here, my friends. I mean, just look at these 2 cookies side by side. The circular shape, the flavorings, the colors, the filling, the biscuits, and that's not even mentioning the design. The name in the center, the ridged edges, the intricate floral-inspired pattern. It's safe to say that the Oreo was made to look like the Hydrox. Heck, even the name Oreo is a jab at Hydrox. It's a reference to the Oreo Daphne, a genus of flowering mountain laurels just like the pattern on the Hydrox cookie. This, theorists, is the first dark secret at play here. The uncomfortable truth about America's favorite cookie, nay, the world's favorite cookie, is that it's an outright ripoff of the original Hydrox. Now, there's a fine line between unethical business and good business. Say what you will about Oreo's origins, but the fact of the matter is that it was followed up by decades and decades of good business decisions on Nabisco's part, and a lot of questionable ones on Hydrox's end. Today, the original sandwich cookie has faded into obscurity, while the imitator cookie is a beloved icon the world over, and that's all thanks to marketing. First, we have got to talk about the names here. I mean, why on earth would someone name their cookie the Hydrox? Like, you might as well have named the thing hydrogen peroxide at that point. Elon Musk is master of strange names, and even he wouldn't name his kid Hydrox. But what's crazier than the name Hydrox is that Loose Wiles actually wanted for a chemical-sounding name. They named it Hydrox to recall the purity of water, as in the chemical compound of hydrogen and oxygen. See, Hydrox hit the scene at a time when other food companies were literally putting stuff like chalk, sawdust, and even sulfuric acid into food products. So purity was a really appealing marketing claim. And for a time it worked. People loved their Hydrox. And Oreos operated at a loss for years. Perhaps Oreos would have gone the way of Hydrox, but then came the advertisements. You see, Hydrox was annoyed that Oreo copied their idea, and understandably so. But Loose Weil made the mistake of letting that pettiness creep into their ads. For decades, the Hydrox was presented to consumers not as a delightful, delicious snack, but as the first sandwich cookie. But who cares about being the first? It's about what you deliver to the person buying you. And while Hydrox was busy stamping their feet and whining about copycats, Oreos just emphasized the fact that they were fun to eat.
It's fun living on a ranch, but who's having the most fun? He's riding a pony, but they're eating Oreo cookies. Delicious Oreo cream sandwich.
Not to pile on here, but compare that outrageously wholesome slice of Americana to this Hydrox commercial from the 80s.
You like a creamy center? Here's a creamy center. Thick, delicious, creamy. But you gotta remember my name, Hydrox. Hydrox, don't forget, Hydrox.
Yeah, that one makes me really want to eat your cookie.
If you're living with severe alopecia areata, it's time to grow out loud. With FDA-approved Litfulo. In just under 6 months, some people taking Litfulo saw significant hair regrowth that covered 80% or more of their scalp. Some even saw this amount of regrowth in just 4 months. Litfulo is the first and only once-daily prescription pill for both adults and adolescents 12 years.
To recap what we just witnessed, that was a television commercial in which a Hydrox cookie reveals himself to the audience, then gets arrested for it. Anyway, hindsight is 2020, and from where I'm sitting, it's pretty clear that Oreo had the stronger marketing strategy for like the entire 20th century. And the kicker is that Nabisco actually started charging more for Oreos in order to make Hydrox seem like the crummier cookie. Anyway, long story short here, Oreo managed to turn its lagging sales around in the mid-1950s, overtaking Hydrox to be the best-selling sandwich cookie, and they've never looked back since. But despite being bested by Oreo at every turn, Hydrox always had one ace in the hole. Its recipe was kosher, whereas Oreo's was not. The Loose Wiles company did make one smart move early in its founding. In 1924, they partnered with the Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations of America to create the first kosher certification agency in the United States. Hydrox was one of the first to get approved. This move earned Hydrox a lasting commitment in the Jewish community, even to this very day. Now, let's take a moment to clarify what being kosher actually means. If you're Jewish, you could probably skip ahead a minute or two, or, keep watching to make sure that the Jewish researchers that I had working on this episode aren't speaking out of turn. If not, well, shalom internet! Basically, the Jewish religion calls for its followers to follow kashrut, which is a set of dietary laws that describe what Jews can and can't eat and how they can eat it. In chapter 11 of Leviticus in the Torah, God gave Moses and his brother Aaron rules for the children of Israel. There are rules for everything that roams the earth, swims in the sea, and flies in the skies. But the only rule that applies here is this, quote, "Whatsoever it parteth the hoof, and is wholly cloven-footed, and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that may ye eat. Pigs have cloven hooves, but they do not chew their cud. Therefore, they are not kosher." That is why Oreos were historically considered treif, or non-kosher. The original recipe called for lard to give that white cream center its tasty, buttery texture. Lard is rendered from pig fat. That's right, what's that creamy stuff in the middle of an Oreo cookie? Well, amongst other things, pig fat. Anyway, lard worked fine in the white creamy stuff for decades until the public started to get concerned about saturated fats, at which point Oreo adjusted its recipe to use hydrogenated vegetable oil instead. At that point, Oreo found themselves with a cookie that contained fully kosher ingredients, but they didn't have kosher certification because the kitchen and utensils used to prepare kosher food have to be cleansed as well. And for a company of their size, obtaining that certification would be no small or inexpensive undertaking, as it meant Nabisco would need to get their factories kosherized, which, by the way, is apparently a real word. I looked it up. Nabisco knew the price tag of kosherization would be massive, but it would be worth the cost, right? Who wouldn't want more customers in the Jewish community? Well, it's not that clear-cut cut of a story. The market for kosher cookies is pretty teeny. Less than 2% of the US's population is Jewish, and a minority of those, only about 20%, actually keep kosher. Worldwide, there are about 14 million Jewish people around the world in 2010, representing 0.2% of the global population, and of those, only 50% stay kosher. So at most, you're talking about maybe 7 million new customers for a cookie that is already dominantly the #1 cookie in the world. And yet, in 1994, Oreo pulled the trigger and began what's likely the most expensive corporate kosherization of all time. Why'd they do it? Well, it's not as though Oreo made their true intentions public knowledge. The company claims that it was all about ice cream. A lot of kosher certified ice cream companies apparently wanted to partner with Oreo, but couldn't because the cookie brand wasn't certified. But really, the choice to go kosher came with an added benefit for Oreo. This benefit is both business and personal in nature. The kosher niche market was pretty much the only thing that their old rival Hydrox had going for them at that point. By going kosher, Oreo realized that they might finally be able to put their nemesis Hydrox out of business for good. And that's exactly what happened. 4 years and tens of millions of dollars later, Oreo finally got their kosher certification, and by 2003, Kellogg's, who owned Hydrox, stopped making the cookies altogether. Hydrox, the original sandwich cookie, had finally been done in by the copycat. That is, until a few years ago when Hydrox came back. In 2015, a small candy company that thrives on nostalgia called Leaf Brands decided to bring back the original sandwich cookie. A return that would, go figure, also come packaged with an $800 million complaint filed against Oreo's parent company, Mondelez International. And this, theorists, is the other dark secret that I teased earlier in the video. Oreo, after all these years, is still allegedly playing dirty to kill off Hydrox. Only this time the battle's happening in the grocery store cookie aisle. I mean, it sounds crazy, but since 2015, Leaf Brands have found example after example of Hydrox being hidden behind Oreo packages, being turned sideways on the shelf, being shoved to the back of the shelves, moved to the top shelves, pretty much anywhere except for where the consumer could easily see them. Why would that have anything to do with Mondelez International or Oreo brand? Because Mondelez is literally in charge of product placement on cookie shelves. That's right, these days big companies like Mondelez International, who spend a lot of money on in-store marketing, can actually become what's known as category captains for their aisles. This means that they decide how the shelves are laid out, not just for themselves, but also, strangely enough, for their competitors, which is just like the most monopolistic thing out there. It is so insane. It'd be like... be like letting Babe Ruth umpire a Yankees game. It's like letting a defendant judge his own trial. It's like letting Food Theory choose your suggested video feed. Okay, maybe that one isn't so bad. Furthermore, Mondelez has the resources to do direct store distribution, meaning they send their own people to physically place the products on shelves rather than letting the store handle it. So when a certain product is regularly found hidden or out of place or in an inconvenient position, there's a good chance either the category captain or the person stocking the shelves is to blame. And in Hydrox's case, Mondelez is often both. Basically, these days, the grocery store is cutthroat and there's no place for the little guy. So does this mean that Hydrox is doomed yet again? Has it slipped to the bottom of the milk glass and gotten soggy and inedible? Not so fast. If Hydrox wants to be the little brand that could, ironically enough, they just need to go back to their roots. Just like the cookie, this story is coming full circle. Remember how I said in the early 20th century consumers were really concerned about food purity because of the literal poisons that were being stuffed into the food that they were purchasing, and that's why Hydrox got their name? Well, today we seem to be going through that exact same process, asking ourselves what we're eating and if it's doing more harm than it's worth. And wouldn't you know it, but Leaf Brands is producing the reborn Hydrox using the original Loose Wiles recipe, which calls for all non-GMO ingredients, including real cane sugar and real vanilla. Realistically, Hydrox is gonna get way more bang for their buck advertising as a healthier alternative to Oreo rather than sticking with the same griping and borderline flashing that they'd been doing for decades. And best of all, we know that that strategy can work in the face of juggernauts like Oreo, Nabisco, and Mondelez. Let me introduce you to Tate's Bake Shop, a small brand of chocolate chip cookie that in less than 20 years broke through the crowded cookie market to give Mondelez, a company that made billions in the cookie aisle, a run for their money. The reason Tate's Bake Shop was so successful was that it was a premium product made with the same ingredients that that you or I would use to make cookies. Chocolate chips, unbleached flour, butter, eggs, vanilla, you know, normal sounding stuff, not chemical names. And it worked. People were snatching them up, causing an upheaval in the chocolate chip cookie market strong enough to get Mondelez to purchase the brand for $500 million in 2017. Hydrox has the same advantage, so use it. Why not try something different? And if you don't mind, might I suggest starting with the name? But hey, speaking of fresh, healthy ingredients, maybe you should try something different today, like HelloFresh, the sponsor of today's episode. Theorists, do you want 12 free meals delivered right to your door with zero delivery charge? No nothing? Just free food immediately on your doorstep? Well then listen up. Go to HelloFresh.com by clicking the code down in the description and use the code FOODTheory12 to get 12 free meals including free shipping. You heard that right, 12 meals all delivered right to your door for free. Like, if that's not a deal that's worth giving a try, I don't know what is. HelloFresh sends recipes and meal kits straight to your door every week. And let me tell you, the ingredients arrive on time, they're fresh, and the meals are delicious. Running 4 channels that produce 6 videos a week, plus having a 2-year-old, my time is pretty tight these days. So having the meal decisions and ingredient shopping taken care of by HelloFresh is a lifesaver, meaning that my free time stays free. I'm not having to run as many errands or choose what to eat. It is there for me on the doorstep, giving me more time to play with Ollie, to relax, and read up on the disturbing histories of all my childhood favorite brands so I can ruin them in the series for you. Seriously, for our family, HelloFresh helps me avoid just grabbing fast food for every meal. It works a variety of high-quality meals into our week, avoids getting into recipe rut, and has really cut down on my blackout sandwich cookie binges. HelloFresh is an absolute lifesaver. It's also an earth saver. HelloFresh's carbon footprint is 25% lower than that of meals made with store-bought groceries, and they gave over 4 million meals to charity last year. So thank you to HelloFresh. I really appreciate your sponsorship. And also sometimes I dream about your garlic bread. Remember, theorists, link is in the top line of the description, HelloFresh.com, and Food Theory 12 at the checkout for 12 free meals, no delivery fees. And lastly, remember, it's all just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit.
Here, Matt Pat.
Oh, hey Mickey. I'm just curling up with a warm cup of cocoa, reading this listicle about famous products that are actually ripoffs. These keep getting suggested to me ever since I made that food theory episode about how Oreos are actually Hydrox cookies. Hey, what's this one? This article says that Finding Nemo was actually plagiarized?
Does it now?
Well, apparently in 2002, there was a French children's book about a little clownfish whose father is killed and through an epic journey ends up reuniting with his mother.
Well, clearly you must be forgetting an important detail, Matt Pat. Nemo is all about a dying mother and the boy's quest to reunite with his father. Clearly different, haha.
Mickey, come on.
Look at the colors, Matt Pat. Nemo is clearly a different color.
They're both orange.
Are they, Matt Pat? Are they? Nemo is obviously slightly more red than this shark tail reject.
But apparently there's other stuff in here too.
Are you actually going to believe the clickbait, Matt Pat?
No, I'm gonna do the research. I'm not gonna sleep until I know the truth about this one, Mickey, no matter what it takes.
Well, fair warning, Matt Pat. You might not like what you find at the end of that journey.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, where if I was a fish, I'd be a bottom feeder. Speaking of bottom feeders, at least I'm not a lawyer. Haha! That segue was so seamless you didn't even see it. Wow, now that we're talking about lawyers, you know who gets sued a lot? Disney. In all seriousness, the old House of Mouse has been a frequent target for lawsuits over the years for reasons that have less to do with their guilt or innocence and with a simple law of economics. They's where the money's at. People aim their lawsuits at Disney for the same reason that bank robbers go after banks. Things go well, could be an easy payday. Of course, most attempts to sue Disney are also foiled for the same reason that most bank robbery attempts don't pan out. They can afford better security. Let's just say that when you're a $300 billion company with lots of lawyers and governmental connections, you have a lot of ways that you can protect yourself. So it makes it really unclear when Disney is actually doing something wrong versus when a lawsuit is just another shameless cash grab. Case in point, in 2003, our dear friend Mickey was actually a target of a lawsuit by a French children's author who claimed that Disney plagiarized the idea for for his book, an idea that would eventually lead to the production of Finding Nemo. You know, the first Pixar film to win an Academy Award, one of the American Film Institute's 10 best animated films of all time, the movie that is the best-selling DVD in history, at the time the single highest grossing G-rated movie with a total box office just shy of $900 million. You know, saying that movie was stolen is kind of a big deal. Also, as a quick side note here, I should mention that in 2003, Disney didn't own Pixar yet, but it was the distribution company for the movie, so they were involved in the lawsuit too. Just a lot easier to point to the rodent-themed mascot that serves as the face of corporate global domination instead of, you know, a silent jumping desk lamp. The story of the children's book author goes like this. In 1995, Franck Lecalvez claims to have come up with an idea for an animated film about clownfish. A simple boy's father dies, a boy must go on an epic journey to reunite with his surviving mother story. As a guy in his mid-20s at the time, he was an aspiring filmmaker, and he claims that he pitched his idea to French production companies and animation studios. But no one bit. Get it? No one bit. Anyway, his idea lay untouched for half a decade until, in the year 2000, he finally decided to take his animated film concept and turn it into a children's book, Perrault le Poison Clown. Oh god, boys and clowns! Oh, sorry, I misread that. It's Perrault le Poisson Clown. Perrault the clownfish. It's been a few years since I took French. For a minute there, I thought I had to be even more scared of clowns than I already am. Nope, the only thing I have to be scared of in this story are these lumpy clownfish illustrations that'll fuel my nightmares. Because no one believed in his story, Lecalvez self-published the book. Reportedly, he paid $71,000 to print 2,000 copies, and miraculously, he managed to sell them all to bookstores, though it's unlikely that he actually turned a profit. At $70,000 for 2,000 books, he was probably spending about $35 for each one, and considering that retail bookstores tend to charge a margin of around 40%, the only way that he would have made any money back is if the bookstores were charging over $58 a copy, which I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say was not the case. No children's book is worth that, especially when the cover looks like this. In other words, he was probably eating a massive loss on each copy sold, but hey, who am I to dissuade a man for pursuing his dream of being a children's book author with observations about the harsh realities of the economics of book publishing? Anyway, in 2002, Lecalvez finally got his idea out into the world, both by self-publishing a children's book and by registering a screenplay with the French Society of Authors, apparently unwilling to give up with his movie-making aspirations. At last, he was able to tell the story of a young clownfish who, after tragically losing one of his parents to an underwater predator, was able to reunite with his remaining parent after a marine journey. Life was good. So imagine how crushing it would be when the following year Disney and Pixar releases Finding Nemo, which shatters box office records and touts what seems to be a pretty suspiciously similar premise. For one thing, it's gotta be frustrating to pitch an idea to film production companies and get rejected, only for a movie with the same premise to become literally the highest grossing animated film of all time 8 years later. You know, peek behind the scenes, I actually feel a bit of the sting. I actually pitched an idea that was roughly the video games that made us to Netflix, only for them to reject it and then see them do the exact same concept a few years later with the series High Score.
I don't know. 5 of my friends got Netflix. It's a very achievable goal.
Well, you don't have to rub it in, Summer, but as an added to the CGI'd gills, French bookstores started taking his book off the shelves because they thought that his 2002 children's book was ripping off the idea from the 2003 Disney film. In an interview with NBC News Today, Lecalvez explained, quote, "What's really upsetting is that quite a few bookstores won't sell my book because they think that I have plagiarized Nemo. This was the last straw. Lecalvez decided that if anyone was going to be throwing around accusations of plagiarism, it was going to be him, which led to the lawsuit in December 2003 where he claimed that Disney was the one who copied his idea, demanding that Disney give him a share of profits from all Finding Nemo merchandise sold in France. Given that Finding Nemo sold over 40 million copies of the DVD during its first 3 years on store shelves, with tons more made in the sale of toys, coloring books, and other merch, that would put a lot of money at stake, even if it was just limited to France. So that sets up our multi-million-dollar question for the day. Did Disney Pixar actually steal the idea for Finding Nemo? Who is right in this David versus Goliath story? Is this a simple case of the greedy corporation stepping on the little guy, or is something else at play here? That, my friends, is what I aim to look at today. First, we have to answer the interesting legal question of can you actually sue someone for copying your idea? The answer is, it depends on the idea. There's of course the idea of intellectual property, something that Disney, of all corporations, knows a lot about, considering how hard they've worked to keep their original characters out of the public domain, going so far as to spend millions billions of dollars each year lobbying Congress so that the copyright laws mysteriously change every time a certain cartoon mouse from 1928 gets old enough that he's at risk of entering the public domain. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, look up the most recent of these, the Copyright Term Extension Act of 1998, also known as the Sonny Bono Act, or its unofficial name, the Mickey Mouse Protection Act. As you're reading about this one, I direct your attention to the fact that they were trying to get the copyrights to last forever, and when that was deemed unconstitutional, they proposed forever minus 1 day. Can't make this stuff up. Let's just say that they want to make very sure that they're the only ones using that talking mouse. So mark your calendars for January 1st, 2024, which is currently when the expiration of the copyright for Mickey's first movie, Steamboat Willie, and along with it, Disney's claim to that version of Mickey Mouse, expires. It's also worth noting that Superman and Batman are set to come due a few years later in 2031. But here's the thing, just because they own a specific cartoon mouse doesn't mean that they own the idea of talking cartoon mice in general. Disney's copyright covers Mickey, sure, but that doesn't mean that they can go after Warner Brothers for Pinky and the Brain or Speedy Gonzales. They own a copyright on a specific character. On the other hand, if you were to create a walking, talking mouse with red shorts, large yellow shoes, white gloves, and large circular ears, then you might come across a problem. Unless you are using him for parody purposes, which falls under fair use, which is what I did in the opening gag, so please don't sue us, Disney. The point is that when talking about copyright, if Le Calvez wants to claim that Disney's Finding Nemo infringes on his, he needs to prove substantial similarity. This is the legal standard in the US, and while EU countries like France sometimes use slightly different language like striking similarity, the basic principles tend to boil down to the same 3 requirements. First, you need to own a valid copyright. Second, you need to show that the person you're suing actually copied your work. And third, you need to prove misappropriation, meaning that the thing that was copied was substantial, either by copying a lot of your idea or by copying the core or heart of the work. The first item on the checklist, that you have a valid copyright, kind of a no-duh. Le Calvez not only owns the copyright on his children's book, but he also took the step of registering the copyright for the screenplay version of his story. The last point, misappropriation, is something that would also likely fall in his favor. After all, the central story of Perrault le Poisson Clown is about a kid clownfish who needs to reunite with his one surviving parent after his other parent is killed by a marine predator. That isn't some random insignificant detail, it is the heart of both of these stories. So that is 2 major items checked, but the part that gets a little bit harder to prove is that second bullet point, that Disney outright copied his idea. Now, as you can imagine, it's pretty difficult to prove that someone just copied your work, which is why courts often rely on the striking similarity test. If you can show that the quote-unquote copied version is so similar to the original that there's no way it could have come about by sheer coincidence, then you've met the standard. So are the similarities between Finding Nemo and Perrault le Poisson Clown close enough to meet the striking similarity requirements? Well, here's what Le Calvez's copyright lawyer had to say about the uncanny resemblance between the 2 characters. First, Nemo, like Perrault, is a clownfish with orange and white stripes who lives in a sea anemone. Now, that right there might sound like 3 points of similarity, but the reality is that all clownfish look like this. If you are going to create a story about a clownfish, then it naturally follows that he would look orange with white stripes. Likewise, clownfish just live in sea anemones. That is a fact. Pointing to these similarities as evidence of copying is like pointing to 2 zebra characters and claiming that one must be copied from the other because they both have black and white stripes and live in the savannah. They also claim that there were, quote, the same supporting characters in the film, such as a surgeon fish and cleaner shrimp, and gentle fish folk who help the little troubled hero. Now, if you're wondering about that surgeon fish he mentions, no, he's not referring to a fish doctor working on a high pay scale. Ha-ha! I'm sorry, I have a problem. No, they're referring to a family of fishes known in the scientific community by the name Acanthuridae, meaning tail spine. Dory, being a blue tang, is part of this family of fish, and one of Perrault's friends is also part of that same fish family. However, pointing to 2 fishes being in the same taxonomic family as evidence of copying, in scientific terms, is like saying that Mordecai from Cartoon Network's regular show must be a ripoff of the crows from Dumbo because blue jays and crows are part of the same bird family. If that sounds like a dumb stretch, you're right, it is. Which is why I'm writing it down as a future theory idea. But seriously, it's kind of flimsy evidence, right? Likewise, the cleaner shrimp that they mention is just a common underwater animal. As for those gentle fish folk who help the little troubled hero, yeah, it's not gonna fly. Clearly, Disney must have copied my idea because my main character, who is a fish, meets other fish characters who help him on his journey. Obviously, though, the strongest point of comparison is with the beginning of the story. A clownfish parent dies, leading to a perilous journey where a kid reunites with his parent. That's hard to argue against as a direct connection, right? you'd be surprised. Consider this, Disney has a long history with killing off its animal parents, be it Bambi in 1942, The Fox and the Hound, Brother Bear, Lion King. They practically invented the trope. So that alone is gonna be pretty hard to defend, but making matters worse is the premise of both of these stories. Well, sure, they look similar on paper, they don't match up when you dive deeper. In Perrault, the young little clownfish is the one who has to go away to find his parent, while in Finding Nemo, it's the dad Marlin who goes on the grand adventure. And also it's worth mentioning that the way both journeys play out is just vastly different. But Le Calvez's case gets even harder to defend when you consider the timeline of events. At first glance, it seems like his book, released in 2002, came before the movie, released in 2003. So clearly the one that came second must be the copy, right? But you as well as I know that animated movies take a long time to make. Finding Nemo was in pre-production way back in 1997. Even Le Calvez's copyright lawyer admitted that the film was finished by the time the book came out. In short, the only real piece of evidence that Le Calvez has to stand on is his own claim that in 1995 he pitched French animation studios about an idea for a movie about a clownfish. Personal anecdotes don't really hold up in court. And if that's Le Calvez's argument, that someone heard him talking about his idea in the 1990s and decided to make Finding Nemo based on that, then it makes no sense for him to talk about the visual similarities, since he didn't hire an illustrator for his children's book until years after he was already done pitching the idea. And surprisingly, the French court actually ruled that there were significant enough visual differences between the two characters. To quote a translation from the original French, Perrault appears longer and cylindrical, Nemo is in a range of red, and Perrault in ranges of orange. One has scales, the other not. If the two characters are smiling, Nemo shows teeth and the smile is close to that of a human, while Perrault's mouth, toothless, resumes the smile attributed to certain representations of dolphins. One also looks like they put his model through a blender, but you know, that's not my place to judge. So, is that the end of our story? Little guy loses because of the big corporation steamrolling over him? I mean, that's where most of the clickbait articles stop the story, so it must end there, right? No, my friends. The ruling of the French court found that there was something shady going on, and Disney wasn't the villain. See, everything that I've just laid out is stuff that the French court figured Le Calvez and his lawyer already knew, or at least should have known. The lawyer would have known that Disney would win the case. Le Calvez would have known that a movie couldn't have copied the look of his main character from a book published less than a year earlier. That's not me speculating, that is basically the legal conclusion of the French court, which ruled that Le Calvez knew about the existence of Finding Nemo when his own clownfish protagonist was brought to life by an illustrator. After all, Finding Nemo didn't hit theaters until 2003, sure, but previews of Finding Nemo were appearing on home video copies of Disney movies back in 2002. In fact, the French court's ruling went as far to say, quoting from the BBC, Nemo had existed before Perrault, and that Le Calvez knew of the Disney character when he created his. In short, this does wind up being a story about someone copying someone else's idea for a profit, but Disney wasn't the one doing the copying. Le Calvez tried to rip off Disney. He not only ended up losing his case, he was forced to pay a total of 61,000 euros, or about $100,000 in damages to reimburse Disney for the legal fees from his frivolous lawsuit. And here's the kicker, friends, to also pay for the cost of advertising the ruling, just to make sure that everyone knew that Disney was innocent in all of this. Le Calvez, I'll accept my paycheck now, please. Oh. I guess I'm not a part of that. In fact, if you start looking at the case from the standpoint of him being guilty from the start, like maybe this was a setup to be some kind of cash grab hoping to nab an easy payday from Disney because they would want to settle out of court and not make headlines, suddenly a lot of the weird details I told you about earlier start to make sense. Like the fact that he paid $71,000 to publish 2,000 copies of a book that would have been impossible to turn a profit on. Or the fact that he waited until 2002 to register his screenplay despite supposedly trying to get his idea made into a film back in 1995. These moves make a lot more sense if you assume that he was already in the process of laying the groundwork for a lawsuit against Disney. And again, that's not me, that was the conclusion of the French legal authorities. I gotta admit, it feels a little bit weird to come down on Disney's side for this episode. After all, my natural inclination is usually to side with the little guy and not the $300 billion mega corporation. But if there's one thing that we're all about here in film theory, it's that you shouldn't always blindly trust your first assumptions. villains. Just because someone looks like the scrappy underdog in a David versus Goliath story, it doesn't automatically mean that there's a good guy. And let's face it, these channels are always telling you that the villains might actually be the ones who were right all along, and today is honestly no exception. I cannot imagine anyone better to play the role of the villain, who may have just actually been right in this case, than Disney. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. And hey, if you like this Finding Nemo theory, make sure you check out our two-parter where we expose Dory's secrets. We have solid evidence to suggest that she might just be faking her memory problems the entire time. Just keep subscribing, so
For over 15 years, the Kung Fu Panda series has remained some of the most iconic animated movies of all time. However, the more you look into the series, the more you'll find layers upon layers of stories and characters that somehow make sense in the end. So join me as I go over everything in this nightmare of a story. Hi everybody, I'm here in a hotel hot tub. It's just the easiest way for me to get into a hot tub and nothing bad will happen. So Kung Fu Panda is a bit weird in my eyes. Everything and every character has a reason for existing, and it's just that, like, I think there's moments where they definitely went overboard with some of this content. Kung Fu Panda takes place on an ancient Earth where the population is exclusively animals. This population includes insects and fish. Already, the first problem becomes determining a time point. The only historical things I could net were the creation of Kung Fu and the Silk Road, both of which have centuries of overlap across the Zhou dynasty. But because of usage of gunpowder in Kung Fu Panda 2, I'm gonna assume that that movie takes place at the same time gunpowder was invented, and according to Google, that was in the 9th century. So let's just say this movie's around, like, 850 and guesstimate from there. But this number can be virtually anywhere. It would still be fine. Like, to give an idea, the amount of time there is between the first and most recent movie, the fourth movie, could be anywhere from 2 years to a decade. It literally does not matter. The first one we're looking at super doesn't matter, because it takes place hundreds or thousands of years before 850. This is Oogway, the founder of Kung Fu. On a journey across the world, he stumbles at this place called the Pool of Sacred Tears, and it brings him to tears so badly he spends 10,000 straight days making and learning the art of Kung Fu. So then he decides to share the wisdom wherever he can. Along with that, he plants the peach tree of heavenly wisdom and begins to establish the Valley of Peace. This valley is going to remain the most important location for the remainder of this run, so just know it's here to save and protect the fragile weakling animals across the crime-ridden country of ancient China. During this time, Oogway then gets weirdly obsessed with world peace and wants more people to hang out with and play darts with him or something in the valley. It gets so bad that as a favor from the Crane clan, he gets cranes to build miles and miles of rope bridges for the animals to flee into the Valley of Peace. And after that, it's not enough, so Oogway's gonna start a war for world peace. In the name of peace, Oogway's gonna unalive all the people who oppose him. He's already working alongside his dear fellow world peace friend, General Kai. One day, though, when killing for peace, Oogway gets fatally wounded and the duo stumble upon the secret panda village. And here they use the mythical power of Chi to save Oogway, and the two learn how to use the skill. Unfortunately, Oogway saw the bad vibes in Kai and had to banish him to the spirit realm and from history. Oogway took his friend out of history because he didn't like his attitude. So now Oogway's uber powered up, he has Chi now, he's still wandering about, and at some point this guy named Jing Dao shows up. Around this time there is a team of warriors called the Four Constellations, and each of them get color-coded Chi from the universe. Just roll with it, the universe is like God, but also not really. And the leader of the Four Constellations, who is Jing Dao, gets the strongest Chi, Golden Chi. Unfortunately, Oogway saw the bad vibes in Jing Dao and had to separate his soul from his body. Jing Dao was trying to find the Chi Wellspring. It gives like infinite Chi, it's under Panda Village, this is gonna be relevant like way in the future. And as a reward, Oogway then gets Jing Dao's Golden Chi. And then for the future, Oogway prophesies a new warrior, a dragon warrior, would appear to take his place when it would be needed the most. And then this person would also get like Oogway's Chi and all that stuff. Really, this is just Oogway saying, in the future, there's gonna be a guy who does what I do, but also again. So big time gap happens, Valley of Peace really starts setting up. Then this other evil dragon, this one named Peepaw, shows up with some demons and attacks Oogway. Luckily, the universe was able to make Oogway get the Chaos Emeralds and he turns into Super Oogway, so he beats the giant, scary, evil dragon. And then this time, Oogway grabs Peepaw grandpa's body into a gross pig, and he won't get revenge for a few centuries. Now, I have no idea why it's like this, but Oogway is by far like one of the most important characters, despite how much he appears in the movies. And we're not even done with Oogway backstory, but someone really important is about to get thrown into the mix. Now, this is Shifu, the most popular and debatably most important of Oogway's dozens of students. When Shifu was young, him and his genuinely shitty father were con artists. They made fake medical talisman, they scammed all of China, and when they make it to the valley, his dad abandons him at the doorsteps of the Jade Palace, which is now Oogway's forever home. And Shifu has daddy issues. Shifu then grows up in the palace and quickly learns to be a master and a substitute teacher for Oogway. Oogway then makes the first Furious 5 team. This team does include Shifu, and then this weird time gap happens where like half of all Oogway's students decide to be evil. This guy named Junji gets mad when Oogway decides Shifu is gonna inherit the Jade Palace. He leaves. At one point, a boar named Coyote starts learning he's not much of a fighter, but he's an incredible engineer, so he builds that advanced training room the Jade Palace has. I'm sure you guys were dying to figure out where that came from. Oogway honestly pulls a dick move here and banishes Coyote because he's not kung fu-y enough. He's too much of an engineer. He got robbed. Oogway created that one. At one point, Shifu gets a girlfriend and they hit it off, but then it gets revealed she was only using him to get closer into the palace and steal treasure there. Shifu then decides he will never find love ever and ends it there. But at least there's still the Furious 5, right? Nope! There's a psychic guy, yep, a psychic guy named Ding. Oogway asks him to train with the monks and fails to vibe check Ding, so when he gets there, he makes all the monks jump to their deaths because he's psychic and he can control their minds. They jump off the cliff. So then the team stops Ding and they had a demon sword. It corrupts whoever uses it, and being corrupted, all 5 members get mad that Shifu destroys it because they all think that they can use it. And that's the end of the first Furious 5. They're fake friends, I'm not gonna lie. But soon after, Feng Hua, the strongest member of this 5, decides to betray Oogway, but unfortunately, Oogway already saw the bad vibes in Feng Hua and already built an owl-sized cage. So she's like the 4th person Oogway trained who ended up evil. But fortunately, this isn't just like exclusively an Oogway thing. This actually happens quite often. At least a decade or two before 850 in Gongmen City, there was peacock royalty, and this city thrives on the production of fireworks and gunpowder. The king had one son named Shen, who would become a great warrior as his parents and a goat called the soothsayer watched over him. When Shen was 10, he had been playing with gunpowder and saw military uses in it. Instead of sitting down with Shen and explaining why war is bad, they get the soothsayer to see Shen's future, and she's like, yo, one day this black and white animal's gonna like wreck his shit if he keeps being a little miscreant. And like, respectfully, do you know how little that narrows it down? So then Shen gets very upset, his parents not, like, just talking to him. He goes on a mass genocide like you do, targeting black and white animals. This includes Panda Village. Fortunately, Shen's not very good at genocide, and a good amount of the pandas including a baby. I'm sure that's not gonna be important. This baby coincidentally gets brought to the valley, and the best character in the series, Mr. Ping, finds him and adopts him. Oh, also Shen's parents died from sadness. Meanwhile, Shifu's failed to have a good relationship with his parents. He's failed to have romance. Maybe he'll be a good parent, right? Haha. So Tai Lung shows up like Shifu did, so Shifu races and trains Tai Lung to maybe, just maybe, become the master. And Shifu spends 20 years ensuring he's gonna be the master, and nothing bad will happen. Unfortunately, Oogway saw the bad vibes in Tai Lung and refused to let him become the Dragon Warrior. Shifu doesn't reassure his son. Tai Lung is honestly justified in being mad at his father figure, doesn't justify him lashing out on the valley. So Oogway then has to knock out Tai Lung and imprison him for the rest of his life, as Tai Lung waits for the day to seek revenge and become the warrior. Holy shit! Half of these bad students were easily avoidable. Oogway and Shifu gatekeeping and gaslighting Kung Fu is unironically causing 90% of these conflicts, but being optimistic, the next few students are all good guys. Now Shifu's on the couch crying about the fact he's very possibly going to be dying alone. He's failed 3 times at this point, so Oogway decides to go on another friendship quest for, I would say like a year. This leads to Secrets of the Masters and the formation of the Furious 5. And this is Tigress, by far the most important Furious 5 student. She's in an orphanage where, you know, she doesn't have parents or friends because tigers are scary, and she lives alone now. Shifu's ready to try having a child. He's not gonna have to disown. He adopts Tigress and makes her a Jade Palace student, but Shifu's being You know, so Tigris and Shifu will never have a good, proper, built-up father-daughter relationship. Then all the way across China, there's another future 5 member, Mantis. He's also fatherless. His mom ate his dad's head. So Mantis thinks he's gonna have a shorter life and decides to speedrun it by accidentally becoming a local hero. At one point, Mantis stumbles upon some crocodile bandits. For future reference, there's a lot of crocodiles that resort to crime. Many of them come from bad parts of China. This isn't a bit, like almost every single, there's so many crocodiles and almost all of them are criminals. They capture Mantis, he learns patience, he escapes, then he's gonna study acupuncture and try becoming a doctor. That's why he knows medical stuff in the first movie and from there on. The leader that Mantis smartphoned is just named Croc. He leaves to make Storming Ox. Croc's also there. Oogway takes a gander at the script and decides, hey, I'm gonna make you guys a Kung Fu Council. Then this trio, the Wu sisters, show up and Oogway decides to go 2 birds, 1 stone. He forces all of the council to go with him. He fakes his death and then they beat the sisters and now they're all friends, and that's why these guys are in the second movie. Still paying attention? Good! We aren't done with the Furious 5 origin, by the way. Let's start with Crane. He's a janitor who's also fatherless and an overprotective mom. Crane would sneak out to Kung Fu classes at the Li Fang Kung Fu Academy. And then when he moves out, one day the academy hosts student tryouts and another student named Mei Ling, not this Mei Ling, there's 2 Mei Lings for some reason. Crane's in the academy, he's plot relevant now. Then there's Viper. She's special because she's the only Furious 5 member with a dad who loves her. She's born to the Viper clan and they fight with lethal venom. She's the daughter of the great Master Viper and that's jolly and swell. One thing though, she doesn't have the one thing the Viper clan's known for, so she's moderately neglected. Only a little bit though. Her parents still love her, but they're quietly disappointed, just like my parents. One day a guy with armor breaks Master Viper's fangs, but regular Viper uses ribbons to win a fight. So now she's on Furious 5 standby. Then there's Monkey. So when Monkey was young, he had a brother named Wukong. No, not that one. Monkey falls on a banana and his pants fall down. This is an event that leads to the local crime rates. Him and Wukong start pranking the Count, and Wukong did kind of nudge Monkey into being this bad boy. Eventually, Monkey will chill out when he gets this girlfriend named Yaya, until one night when she's cheating on him with Wukong. Brotherly violence ensues, Wukong gets arrested, his mom also dies from sadness, and Monkey becomes an orphan because this is Kung Fu Panda. Nobody has a relationship with their dad. Monkey only knowing how to cause harm triples the crime rates once again. Then the town sends warriors to take Monkey out, but he keeps winning. Until Oogway shows up. Don't forget, he's still on that friendship quest. He curb stomps Monkey, but saves his life. He goes, Monkey. And that makes Monkey a good guy and a part-time comedian. I want to say now the year's like 846. Let's go with that, sure. This is Secrets of the Scroll. And you remember how this series is named after a panda? Well, he's actually plot relevant. Po is actually important now. Shifu and Oogway are watching, currently their only active student. Then they get warned that a boar, creatively named Boar, is on his way to fight Shifu. Oogway then goes, damn, that's crazy. Let's get DoorDash. So they get noodles at Mr. Ping's restaurant where Po's in charge because Mr. Ping goes on a supply run. Chef Po sneezes into the DoorDash order, and now Shifu's got like black lung or something. Tigris is then ordered by Shifu to find a list of warriors, but while Po finds out that he got Shifu sick and is looking for a career change. Some of these careers include a janitor, a doctor, a dancer, and a comedian. And then the scrolls get mixed up. Guess what happens next? Shifu is mad about these freaks at his doorstep. The 5 ignore him and they beat Boar. Now there's a Furious 5, along with a panda who likes Kung Fu because he was watching them fight. He loves it. And then, after all of that, we are now at the original movie. The main character's journey really starts here. Oogway foresees that it's finally time to choose the Dragon Warrior for real this time. Po wants to go see who it is, but his dad makes him take the noodle cart, so he misses the tournament. As a last resort, Po uses fireworks to launch himself into the sky. This is when I realized he totally could have just gone around this wall. I understand that's not the point of this, but like I just want to let you know that he could have just gone around. There's nothing stopping him. Your protagonist is an idiot. Po lands directly in front of Oogway, so Po's instantly promoted to clan co-leader. I love him, but Po is the universe's nepotism baby. You know, all of this story beforehand does provide a deeper insight as to why the I don't mind Po as a person, but the fact he's managed to take this position that the 5 in Tai Lung spent so much time working to earn, they're upset, and that's totally fair. And I can see that other than his naturally high defense skills, Po's kind of like one of the worst picks for the Dragon Warrior and Oogway's successor, so Shifu's pissed, Tigress is pissed, the other members of the 5 are more so just shocked, and to make matters worse, Oogway reveals Tai Lung's coming back, so just to be safe, Shifu sends a worker to double the guards at Tai Lung's prison, and then because of this, Tai Lung escapes. And then Oogway finds out, he tells Shifu, look man, I did my part, you just gotta do your shit, you just gotta get your shit together, I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, bye. And now, Oogway ascends to the spirit realm, leaving Shifu to train Po for the inevitable. Then the 5 take a deep, respectful look at their savior of the Valley of Peace against Tai Lung. So then they go to stop Tai Lung themselves. This results in a cool fight, but they fumble the 5v1. While this is going on, Shifu brings Po to the Pool of Sacred Tears, and knowing you could never get between a big boy and a meal, uses food to train/starve him. As a result, this makes Po pretty competent for the Tai Lung fight. Then when returning, Po gets the Dragon Scroll that'll give him the super sacred Dragon Warrior advice that'll for sure make him win. But this scroll is blank, so they all just give up. That's fine, you know, my secret noodles have no sauce. I just do my best and that works out. So Po realizes that while Shifu's almost about to die, he doesn't, and Po uses the most secretest weapon of all. He turns on items and stage hazards, and because Tai Lung's only practice for tournaments, you know, he loses on the walkout stage, and after Po fills up his final smash meter, he sends him to the spirit realm. And so, the first movie has concluded. Po has become a real kung fu fighter, and the Valley of Peace is safe until 850. But for real this time. Anywho, schmackle-a-doo, let's talk about Kung Fu Panda 2, is what I would be saying if this was easy. I'm gonna say this once and only once for now and for the future when it comes to DreamWorks franchises. Almost every single DreamWorks property has gotten some sort of special content, like games, comics, Christmas special, stuff like that. Kung Fu Panda has a lot of this stuff. They have comics, some shows, some games. There's even an official manga adaptation of the first movie that hasn't been localized, but DreamWorks also clarifies that any alternate media outside of movies and specials are less canon, as in, they don't matter. Yes, he was ignoring that, and that's why the movies take up so little of the story. This series actually has a ton of explanation for each character. Like the Wu sisters, those characters who only showed up in one canon special, they appear like 2 more times. One of which is in the comics, where they do impersonations. The comics are mostly world building, if I'm being honest. I didn't read them that much, I skimmed over them. Brief rundown of all the events that mattered, I think. Po had a childhood friend named Kung, he did kung fu with them. This is probably a plot hole. The gang go to Tai Lung's prison and, like, test upgrades on it. One time, Tigress and Po get caught in a Chinese finger trap together. I feel like there would be scissors at this point. Most of these are one-off adventures. Most of these don't amount to much. This gets a skip. And then there's the games. I don't like the games. The first one is a loose adaptation. It's mostly the same, but the gang goes on a few bonus quests between the events of the movies, so we can ignore this once. And especially this needs, we gotta find like holy water for this or something. Legendary Warriors can actually be considered something unique, though it has one of the worst plot holes in the franchise. Just for the future, this sucks. Everyone knows this. At the end of the first movie, Tai Lung dies. Sure, he goes to the spirit realm. Regardless if they are a good Gus or they are a bad Brian, they will go to the spirit realm. Oogway is here and Tai Lung is here. This plot involves rats capturing everyone in the Jade Palace. Not only are the Wu sisters back, but somehow Tai Lung came back, and there's no explanation for this. Tai Lung specifically has no way to revive himself. You think that's bad? Here's a Tai Lung counter. Every time Tai Lung gets revived, we're adding to this. Doesn't go anywhere, by the way. He loses, and then goes back, and then doesn't because the MMO game, Kung Fu Panda World, happens, and he's here too. This one's delisted, though, as far as I can tell. This is just about new students learning Kung Fu. Just take my word, he's been unalived 3 times now. And then finally, Blue Skidoo, Kung Fu Panda 2. Shen's still mad about being disowned by his now deceased parents and is stealing scrap for metal from as much of China as possible. I'm gonna assume this Christmas special also happens right before the movie. Po's asked to host a holiday feast, he calls everyone cringe and enjoys the special time of year with his dad while convincing all the masters of the 5 and even Shifu to join in on the fun. Good moment, I'm glad Po's got a good heart and that the Jade Palace has accepted him as a friend. But that scrap metal thing, that's pretty bad. So bad that Po recognizes this weird symbol that introduces PTSD into the funny panda's life. Aw, hamburgers. The Council of Kung Fu, remember them? They're these guys. They've taken control of Gangneung City on account of Shen being an unviable ruler because Well, you know. Turns out Shen made a win button. All he needs to do is shoot this cannon, and he instantly one-shots anyone in front of it. Which happens to Rhino. He's out of the picture now. Po and the Five are then asked to walk over to Gongmen City and knock off this peacock mischief. Right before, though, Po finds out that he's adopted. He is... Doesn't matter. I'm afraid parents who adopt are still parents. This is a Mr. Ping channel. The gang makes their way on over and eventually sees the remaining council staying in prison to minimize casualties that could come when fighting Shen. And then soon after Shen and Po finally meet each other, Po lets Shen escape because of the symbol thingy. The Five are pissed at him. They decide to go fight Shen without Po, and then they lose and Po gets Star KO. This leads to Po miraculously being rescued by the soothsayer at the old Panda Village. She helps him embrace his challenges and grow from it. Through the best scene in the franchise, Po is able to recognize his faults and what special things brought him to a group of people who love and care for him. Po finds inner peace. I forgot to mention inner peace. Shifu says he has to learn it at the beginning. Anyway, the Five's about to get executed. Po says no. Shifu, being safe, also came to help. He brings the council with them. They almost lose, but Po uses his mad skills to stop Shen once and for all, finally ending Shen's reign and banishing him to the spirit realm. Then this game happens, and this one's about lowering the crime rates and stopping Shen's goon. And now we're done with that movie.
Hey, excuse me, sir?
Oh, hi, off-screen hotel lifeguard who's on screen now. What's hippity-hoppity happening?
I'm supposed to work for another 2 hours, but I need to leave early and...
That's cool. Just remember, no running.
Can you not interrupt me? This is important.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm sorry. It's been a long week. I shouldn't have gotten like that.
Well, I should apologize too. I didn't mean to cause any trouble for you.
All right, cool. Yeah, cool. So listen, my little cousin has his bar mitzvah tonight. I need to go get ready for that. So just real quick, if you could just make sure to take the steps out when you're done. Like if you slip or fall or anything during my shift, my boss holds me accountable, so we don't want that. Take out the steps. Just don't slip or fall. Don't.
Oh yeah, I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, keep going. Good luck on your thing.
Yeah, all right, tubular. Have good hot tub time.
So let's talk about Legends of Awesomeness, the first of 3 shows. This one ran for quite a while, so we gotta treat Legends of Awesomeness actually bringing back the games and comics and stuff. Let's just say all of this happens between the first and the 3rd movie. This is years of content, and I feel like the best way to look at it is like this, especially when considering there's over 80 episodes that could absolutely be classified as defending the Valley of Peace in between the movies. I don't really think I need to cover every episode. Instead, just like looking at the most important events, lightning round should suffice, I think. Crane's mom shows up, and he gets the mom approval. Wukong escapes prison, and Monkey temporarily falls to bad habits. Po bites someone's head off. Tai Lung's nephew Peng shows up. How did Tai Lung get a biological nephew if he was left at the Jade Palace? I don't know. I really don't. They fight, then Peng actually gets spared. It's not the same fate. He's not relevant. He'll get a dojo, but he's not relevant. A lot of Shifu stuff, actually. Not only does his dad show up and they're somehow able to make peace, but his first and only ex, Mei Ling, shows up. Fortunately, all is good, but Junji returns. He's bad. He breaks it apart. This guy sucks. At one point, Junji will get the Jade Palace, does not matter. Another whatever villain. Fang Quan returns also. She tries to recruit Po for evil things until that falls through. At some point, she gets some sort of time traveling seeds and makes everyone's parents never meet up. There's time travel now. That's great. But she isn't able to stop Po because she can't find Po's parents since they're in the secret Panda Village. She loses the time travel because the tree board said so. The most important thing I could say is that Ki Pa returns and then loses exactly how he loses to Oogway, and that's embarrassing. So next up is at least a little bit after 850. As said before, Shen's pretty bad at mass murder. Who isn't? And Po's dad, Lee, actually survives. In a universe where almost everyone is fatherless, it says a lot that the main guy has 2 of them. Gee, Po, how come the universe gave you 2 dads? I don't know. All I know is Kai's finally back, and he's pissed about Oogway sending him to the spirit realm and intentionally removing him from the history books. It's so bad he beats Tai Lung in a fight off screen. I love Tai Lung, but he sure does lose a lot. Now, Tai Lung is getting all of the characters with turning them into trophies so we can take him to mass master hand or whatever. He's creating jade zombies as they call them. Lee claims that the pandas still remember how to use chi. Him and Mr. Ping go to the new panda village to learn it. Meanwhile, the Five and Shifu try to defend the palace as masters across China fall to Kai. And since this is the last time they're gonna be relevant, the Five just always gets cooked in these movies. Like, did you know throughout the entire trilogy, with the exceptions of Tigress in this movie and technically Crane in the first one, every member gets captured or incapacitated by the big bad every time. And I'm only counting Crane because Tai Lung intentionally let him bring back the other five to the palace as a warning. But at least none of these characters are gonna be treated worse. Right? Anyway, Lee lied about the whole chi thing for more family time, and Po realizes Panda Village is full of trailer park frauds and decides they gotta turn back on the items just like how they did with Tai Lung to defeat Kai. Panda Village is full of the type of people who pick exclusively Coconut Mall and Moo Moo Meadows in Mario Kart. You know who you are. Po gimmicks Kai with command grab, and they get sent to the spirit realm. This time, the pandas use chi and they win. And Kai's spirit body literally ceases to exist in the spirit realm, meaning he no longer exists. Alright. This then gets retconned in Showdown of Legendary Legends and a few other things. Then Oogway returns and says he's proud of Po, still the hero we all deserve, and he gets a nice old greeny sticky stick. And that's the original trilogy. I think it's a timeless trio of tales that are gonna stand the test of time and maybe get held back by their semi-convoluted spin-offs in other medias. But you know what? If it ended here, then this would have been fine. Unfortunately, the red bar is not over there yet. No, because after this movie, Po decides to take an extended vacation, regaining all the lost time with his dad and the pandas in the village. I want to say like at least a year is spent here. So let's just say a year after, sometime after 850. On one hand, this is totally justified on Po's part. Him and Ping should absolutely spend more time understanding and filling in this odd spot of their lives. On another, I hate Panda Village. The third movie is my least favorite because of Panda Village. There is a show that is almost entirely the pandas and is also my least favorite because of Panda Village. I don't like you, I don't like you, you're fine, and I don't like any of this. I thought Paws of Destiny was gonna be a problem with its 26 20-minute episodes, but honestly, it wasn't that bad. Just regular bad. At the very beginning, that guy Jing Dao, he's back now. His soul finally finds a body. He's a problem. And then some broken condoms stumble in and beg Po to become Kung Fu warriors. Then they get the powers of the 4 constellations from centuries ago. This means they're plot relevant now. So Po's basically forced to teach them, and Oogway appears to talk to Po. And Po says he literally can't teach them. They're lost causes. He calls them hopeless. Po, buddy, you're throwing stones in your glass house. You are a hypocrite. Oh, I can't teach these stupid chubby pandas. You yourself were in the exact same situation. Po's so washed. The stupid children go on a quest to save Chi and stop Jin Dao for realsies. Imagine plotting centuries and losing to this. Then everyone likes the panda children. I don't though. Oh, by the way, Po can just be a dragon now. Sure. Then they get invited to the Forbidden City. There's this new freak named the White Bone Demon. That's a bad guy. They almost cause a drought. Luckily, through the power of plot armor and Sun Wukong, as in like actually a different Wukong, or that one. Oh, I don't know. Wikipedia can only get me so far. I hate this show. The next show will release 6 years later. I'm gonna assume that that's not canon accurate, just that it released 6 years later. It's time for Dragon Knight. This is the part of the episode where I break. This is a 3-season entry that spans across Asia, Central America, and Europe. The more I saw, the more I thought about speed dialing my therapist, so buckle up. Po goes on a world tour to try all the different food of the world. Early on, he stumbles across this thing called the Wu Gao Gauntlet. We're just gonna put a pin in there. Would you believe me if I told you the events of Dragon Knight start thousands of years even before Oogway? Because it sure does! At some point anywhere from 300 million years ago to just a few thousand years ago, all of the continents existed in one supercontinent called the Pangaea. I'm gonna say Pangaea sounds right. Just like how our Earth was like. There was some bad guys and they liked war. Then some blacksmiths who didn't like war made some mythical gear that made them undefeatable as they split up the continents. And then they all agreed the gear was too powerful and spread all the parts across the world. There's a helmet, a whip, some wheel thingies, and that gauntlet. 2 mages, because there's magic users now, named Veruca and Klaus, steal the gauntlet because the Queen of England tried to kill all of the magic folks of Europe. So they're a bit peeved. Poe gets the gauntlet's thumb though. This disaster immediately makes him wanted by China and the Emperor, who is a little hamster. And just as Poe becomes wanted by the Chinese government, a knight shows up. This is Luthera. She also goes by the Wandering Blade. I'm just gonna call her Blade. Blade's also wanted, but this time by Europe because she stole some armor. She did this because her brother Alfred was a knight who died to Veruca and Klaus. So she's got a revenge story going on. And all while this is happening, there's a stag named Colin who's trying to bring the blade back to Europe. So just to be clear, Veruca and Klaus want the magic weapons, Poe wants to stop that, Blade wants to kill Veruca and Klaus, and Colin wants to properly arrest Blade. This all happens throughout season 1. At some point, Poe and Blade mutually agree to get another weapon to be at an equal level against Veruca and Klaus. They go to this location called the Lost City, where supposedly there's a fire whip, and then they meet this new freak named Rukamini. She's secretly a bad guy who steals the whip for herself and tries to sell it for the Emperor for half of China's wealth. And after that, everybody gets arrested. Just the whole gang, even Mr. King, purely by association. And then Poe and the gang manage to escape. There's a giant sled battle, and ultimately Poe's group is able to get the whip while Veruca and Klaus leave the gauntlet. And that is where season 1 ends. The good guy gang, now with Mr. Ping, make their way to India where Rukamini lives. All that happens is that they find out they need to go to South America, and Ping gets possessed by one of the blacksmiths named Master Mastodon. And all while that's happening, Veruca and Klaus learn that just like Shen and everybody else, the Queen of England is pretty bad at genocide. Even bigger news, the helmet's here. Guess who steals it? In Central America, the pals make their way to the city of Tikal and stumble upon some frogs, some giant robots, along with some royalty, Zuma, who's got some gear that the team needs, the wheels specifically. And at first everything's good. Poe and pals help out with that robot crisis and eventually stumble upon a little birdie named Akna. She only kind of matters. Apparently, like before Alfred died, they were friends, so Blade trusts her now. Apparently Zuma's using her weapons to steal all the rain, so there's a drought and that's a problem. Veruca and Klaus cause a battle. Zuma fights trying to get more weapons, and everyone else is like drinking root beer or something. It doesn't matter. I don't even remember who has what weapons. It won't matter. Back to sailing, this time with a bird who I'm never gonna mention ever again. The crew's gonna head to England. This is especially important for Blade. And season 3 will happen. All's going good until it isn't. There's pirates. Not only are they pirates, they're the best pirates. Not only that, apparently Mr. Ping was a pirate. Mr. Ping used to be king of the pirates with his pirate queen Forazan. What? I guess Mr. Ping found the One Piece and then he got bored, snitched to the English government, and he starts a new life in China with his lovably obese adopted son. So all the pirates are justifiably pissed at him, but the main crew gets rescued / arrested by a Sir Drake. When arriving at Europe, first off, it's so weird to say Poe goes to Europe. Poe accidentally plays a complete game of chess with the Queen of England, leading to a swamp adventure where they meet Duncan. I don't know what Duncan even is even. Do you remember when I said this was about a Kung Fu Panda? Because now it's about a bunch of European animals finding weapons. There's a weapon dimension! There's a 5th magical weapon! This one didn't split up Pangaea, but Alfred made a mythical sword before he died. This one having the gimmick of anyone who dies to it having their soul trapped to it. Just like Katana, she's got my back. Also, after season 2, Veruca and Klaus got split up. Veruca went to Europe. She unalives Duncan. Duncan deserves better. But Veruca's hot on the tail. Shit's just happening now. I'm not even trying to say somehow, but somehow Alfred gets resurrected through all of this. And he's evil. He wants to bring all of the continents back together, reform Pangaea. I feel like there's a whole argument that makes no sense. Everyone would be fighting for the coastlines, and the middle of the supercontinent would be a mostly uninhabitable desert. Don't even get me started on the oceans, what would happen over there. But I'm sure the uneducated Bear Knight who's been dead for a decade knows what's best for the world. Also, Veruca gets stabbed, and now she's dead. Poe doesn't like the idea of Pangaea, so he gets his pirate dad and Mr. Ping's girlfriend to lie about China and England declaring war on each other. Eventually, Alfred gets distracted by this, and everyone is able to save the universe because that's how powerful the weapons are, I guess. And then all is well. Rukamini becomes a pirate. We're never gonna see her again. Blade joins Poe on the food tour. We're never gonna see her again. And Ping is happily living in Panda Village with his lover, who we're never gonna see again. Wow, I can see why those are considered non-canon, and I didn't even get to question why everyone knows and speaks exclusively English. Doesn't matter because then then that one happened. Kung Fu Panda 4 happens. As a movie, this is probably the worst one in the series, but I liked it more than 3. I'm not exaggerating. I despise Panda Village. There's a lot of problems in this movie. It's too fast, it's too short, there's no character development for Po. I think my own problems come from 2 characters, those being the Chameleon and Tai Lung. If I'm being honest, Awkwafina was tolerable. I don't know what rituals she performed get into another animated kids movie as an annoying semi-important character, but she sure does exist. Po has to stop being the Dragon Warrior because Shifu said so. Instead, he's gonna do what Oogway used to do, just hang out at the Jade Palace forever and go on friendship quests. I feel like that's a bit unreasonable. Po's not really even that old yet, and I think it's even more fair that Po's against that idea until he stumbles upon Awkwafina and is able to successfully send her to jail. As that happens, Shifu gets DM'd and apparently a new little creep known as the Chameleons being bad, and because the Furious Five were intentionally written out of the movie since they're doing their own things, Po and Awkwafina gotta go and save the day, and then there comes the villain. They fumbled so hard. Yeah, just overall they have a bad villain. Chameleon's able to turn into whoever she touches and wants to use magic to take over China because apparently she's too small and nobody wanted to train her to be a kung fu master. She could never be kung fu fighting. And just another thing I gotta know, part of the reason I think Kung Fu Panda villains, specifically the movie ones, stay so iconic is because of their use of color theory. Each of the main villains have a different corresponding color that they associate with them. Rewatch any moments where Shen has the upper hand and they use lots of red. Look at Kai and there's hues of green. This corresponds with Po as well. Po has yellows and oranges to indicate when he's starting to win the battle. For example, at the climax of the first movie, it starts off with a dark blue storm meant to indicate Tai Lung's takeover of the Jade Palace and how he's winning. And that shifts to warmer oranges and sunlight as Po manages to start to balance out the fight. And this goes on for every final fight. Look at any of the climaxes and I promise you, yellow and orange start appearing as Po has a comeback. Now the fourth movie, they don't do this. The Chameleon only has like some hints of lighter blue, but it means nothing. It's such a waste. They could use purples or something and that would have worked wonders. By the time Po reaches Chameleon's base in Juniper City, they only got like 40 minutes left. I wish they could have given like another 15 to 20 minutes fighting like the Chameleon's mob bosses so they could give directions or something. More time to show the Chameleon's a threat. Po's allowed to turn items on, not the villain. Eventually though, it's revealed that Awkwafina is working for the Chameleon and she's gonna regret it in about 10 minutes, but until then, Po's lost his magic stick. Using this, the Chameleon's able to revive all the old deceased warriors. The only one worth noting now is Tai Lung. I think they wasted this character. You know what they should have done? Make some stupid excuse to have Tai Lung come back early. Have it be a buddy adventure with an optional Awkwafina. Tai Lung's only arc is going from hating Po to respecting him as the Dragon Warrior. Have Tai Lung spend time talking to Po. Have Tai Lung redeem himself at the end and end it off with like Tai Lung and Shifu having a good moment talking about their problems and their father and son have some closure here. It would have been beautiful. Everyone would have loved it, but no! Tai Lung gets one cool fight and then he's useless. I'm sure there's more behind the scenes that was absolutely unfair, but that really bums me out that they could have gone this way. In the end though, Po defeats the Chameleon and all the spirits go back to the realm, taking Chameleon with them. I feel like at least a few of them would try escaping though. Kai shouldn't even be here. How does he still exist? And then we reach the current epilogue of this story. Awkwafina's gonna become the new Dragon Warrior. Shifu once again sees this as a goof up, and just like with Oogway and Po, Shifu, you should have seen this coming. And that is everything you need to know about Kung Fu Panda. If we're looking into the future, if there's more movies, hopefully they bounce back. I feel like they definitely dug the franchise into a hole by not making Tai Lung a permanent resident of the Jade Palace. I think just replacing Po is gonna be hard, just based on the route they took. And then I'm gonna be honest, Awkwafina's character really wasn't winning anyone over. I don't know if she's gonna be able to take the spot as Po did, because we had so much time with Po. People are gonna compare these two and go, okay, well Po's the better one. But who knows? Maybe if something new comes out, it'll be great. Maybe a young Oogway spinoff or Furious 5 adventure. There's so many new places that this story can go. You already know what Fortnite is, we can skip the intro. Hi everybody, I'm here on vacation. Even I gotta take breaks every once in a while. Alright, let's start. Our first time point is a simple one. The Big Bang. When the big old bang happened, the universe